Hello and welcome once again to the Political Circus Weekly Podcast. I am your host, Mike Ursery, and this is episode number 14. So the was the polar vortex, which covered a lot of the northern U.S. all the way down to the central United States, and I believe it eventually moved towards the East Coast. And I was in that. I took the brunt of it because, well, where I live, it was only negative 25. Only negative 25 was what the wind chill was. But some parts of the country, like around Minnesota and Iowa and the Dakotas, got as cold as negative 60 degrees. That is, I cannot imagine what living in those kind of conditions would be like. Negative 60 degree wind chill. The temperature was like negative 2 in some places, and it was insane. I saw a few shots on social media of Chicago and Milwaukee. In Chicago, the Lake Michigan, had steam rising up off of it, and the entire city just looked like it was completely frozen. Something else that I saw in Chicago was railroad crews were worried trains derailing because the tracks were frozen. So they actually set railroad tracks on fire to keep them warm enough so that trains could go over them and there wouldn't be any accidents. Never seen that before. That was something else. So the polar vortex started to settle in, I think, around Tuesday night. And then Wednesday into Thursday was when a lot of people were experiencing these really hard temperatures. Like I said, where I live in Missouri, it got like the Wednesday morning, the temperature was about negative 8 degrees and the wind chill was around negative 25. I think it even got down to like negative 30. It wasn't negative 60, but it was still a pretty miserable day. My car managed to start, so I was happy about that. I was wondering if I was going to have any problems with the engine starting because it was so cold. But something interesting about that day, that morning, the skies were clear and it was a really bright, sunny morning, even though it was so cold. And I'll tell you why I'm saying this, because for a span of almost like 2 weeks, constant cloud cover, there was no sun. It was actually kind of depressing because you need sunlight, you need vitamin D, otherwise you start feeling depressed. And we had a few rounds of snow come through, and like the coldest it got was maybe like mid-20s, was probably about how low it dipped. But in that time, it was just always cloudy and there was never any sun. And then come Wednesday morning, the sun is out, it's bright, the coldest day. And I've said this many times and it's worth saying again. The Midwest is weird and I will never understand it. Of course, by Friday, that polar vortex began moving out of where I live and it started to warm up a little. But then this weekend, like Saturday, it's supposed to be high 50s. And then Sunday, it's supposed to be like 63 degrees. And then it's going to drop again. I really don't like this trend of getting cold up and then getting cold again, and then warming up and then getting cold. Back in December, we had a couple of days where it reached like 70 degrees before it dropped down to freezing again. This is how people get sick, because when the weather does this, this is how people get sick. But if you were in an area where it dipped down to those extreme cold temperatures, negative 60, negative 50, hopefully you made it through this okay. I saw some unfortunate footage of homeless people who were frozen to sidewalks and frozen to streets because they had nowhere to go. And that was just a terrible scene. But while the weather was freezing, the competition for the 2020 presidential election is just now beginning to heat up. We already have Elizabeth Warren, who announced her candidacy for the White House back in December. Recently, Kamala Harris has thrown her hat into the ring. Cory Booker also just at the end of this week announced that he is going to run for president. So we're already starting to get candidates, and of course we're still expecting like Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, and I hope Hillary Clinton runs for president. I know that she has really no shot at all this year of winning the nomination, but still, just for the entertainment value, I want Hillary Clinton to run. Miss Clinton, please, all of us, do it for everyone. Please run for the White House because we want to see a show. But so it's starting to heat up, and I don't really want to talk about those Democratic candidates. But what I want to talk about is another person who has announced his candidacy, and he's not going to run with a party. He's going to run independent, and that is Howard Shultz. He is the former CEO of Starbucks, and candidacy on last Sunday, that was January the 27th, he did an interview on 60 Minutes where he said that he has plans to run for president, and people are not happy about it. People on the Democrats and their supporters are not happy about this at all. And now in this interview, he explained why he wants to run as an independent. And the reason for it is because he said that he is not happy with the two-party system. And he said that the Democrats and the Republicans are engaged in revenge politics against each other, and neither party will do what is necessary for the American people. And I'm not going to argue with him on that, because I saw this during that 32-day government shutdown. We saw that exact very thing. The standoff was over border security. Trump would not budge on funding for the wall. Democrats would not budge for the wall, and the government shut down as a result. It's open now thanks to a continuing resolution, which is only 3 weeks long. They have until February 15th to make a deal to fund the rest of the government up to the end of this fiscal year. If they don't have a deal made by February 15th, we're going to do this all over again. And count on that happening. Count on the government shutting down again, because we all know this is coming. So Howard Shultz is the former CEO of Starbucks, and he's no longer, although he's still a major shareholder. And he now has his sights set on the White House, and he describes himself as a self-made billionaire. And when you look at his story, he isn't saying that just to pump himself up or to blow smoke. Really did come from nothing. When you look at his life story, this is a man who grew up in Brooklyn in a housing project. And after he finished high school, he earned an athletic scholarship to play football at university. And later on, he became the first person to graduate from his college from his family. Now, after graduation, he landed a job at a sales training program at Xerox. And when he got experience cold calling and in a few years, he took a job at Hammerplast, a housewares business owned by a Swedish company called Perstorp. And there, Schultz ascended the ranks to vice president and general manager, leading a team of salespeople. So, Schultz has said, and this is from an old article from Business Insider. They did a story about Howard Shultz. This is from, I think, 2015. He said that despite all that success, he was getting antsy. He said that it may be a weakness about him, and what he's always wondering what he's going to do next. And eventually, he discovered Starbucks, which was a small coffee shop in Seattle. And he had joined that company. While he was working there, Starbucks sent him to Milan to attend an international houseware show. And while he's walking around the city of Milan, he encounters several espresso bars where owners knew their customers by name and served cappuccinos and cafe lattes. So he goes back to Starbucks, and he pitches this idea to them that he had a vision for this company where they do the same type of thing, and they refused. So he called Giornale, I think is how you say it. I don't speak Italian. He started this company in 1985. And then in 1987, he buys Starbucks, becomes the CEO, And the rest is history. Starbucks grew into the global success that it is now. So you have a man here who grew up in a housing project, actually came from nothing. He searched for opportunities, he took them, and he went from a poor boy in a housing to a self-made billionaire. Howard Shultz really does embody the American dream when you think about it. And now he has presidential ambitions, and Democrats are not happy about that. And the reason they're not happy, they're afraid he is going to split the Democratic vote in. The Democrats' main mission is to keep Donald Trump from winning a second term. They already have the House. They probably won't take back the Senate in 2020. But if they have the House and the White House, that gives them an advantage. They only have the majority over the Republicans for the first time since 2014, I believe, is when the GOP took back the Senate. And a candidate like Shultz puts not reaching that goal. For this reason, Shultz has been receiving a lot of backlash from Democrats in government and their supporters. And a lot of this backlash has been happening on social media, with people talking both to him and about how they don't want him to run for president. Howard Shultz has become the next target for the internet mobs. Look, you have to understand how internet mobs work. They find something about a person they don't like, and they unleash relentless attacks. We saw this with Catholic kids, the one in particular who had the smirk on his face. Everything was about that smirk. They're worried about Shultz splitting the vote and causing the Democrats to lose in 2020, but they need to key in on something about him. They need to find something to zero in on, use that to intimidate him, and force him to change his mind about running. Oh, yeah, he's a white male billionaire. That's exactly what they're going to go for. That's what they're going to do. That's what they're going to do. They're going to key on the fact that he's a white male in America. Yes, it was actually really easy for them to find something to zero in on and use that against him. He represents the wealthiest 1% in America. Never mind the fact that an idea, and he turned it into one of the most successful coffee corporations in the entire world. Never mind that his coffee houses are a frequent favorite of many of these people on the left. Never mind that they turn to Starbucks for their pumpkin spice lattes, their triple shot espresso venti lattes, their cinnamon double venti, whatever. I don't know. I don't go to Starbucks. I went there once and stared at the menu because I had no idea what to order. I even walked up to the barista and gave that person this dumbfounded look because I had no idea how to order it. I can't remember what I got either, but that doesn't really matter. But anyway, this is what has been happening this week. People on the left have found a new enemy, and they're fighting that enemy with their weapon of choice: identity politics. He's a white male billionaire who represents the wealthiest. He's getting in the way of the Democrats' plan to take back the White House. He must be stopped. He must be forced to not run. And, I don't mean for this to be an endorsement for Howard Shultz, so please don't take this as an endorsement. But the thought of a man who started his life from a poor family housing project in Brooklyn and walking down a long road of success that eventually led him to the White House, wouldn't that be an excellent example of the American dream? Wouldn't that be like really the perfect example of the American dream? Isn't that what we preach here in America? A country where you can chase your dreams and achieve your goals? Apparently, only if the internet mobs approve of it. If they don't approve, you better put those hopes and dreams on hold. You cancel those hopes, you cancel those dreams, and you don't even think about achieving those goals because apparently you can be successful and you can only chase after something if other people approve of it. If they don't approve, you're out of luck. That's the way these people work. And it's not just Democrats and their supporters who have started their attacks. It's also gotten involved with this, and the media is actually starting to paint Shultz in a negative light, and not just Shultz, but putting independent candidates in a negative light. I did a Google search the other day, and all I did was type in his name only his name. And the first article that shows up is this opinion piece from the New York Times titled, "Howard Shultz Doesn't Understand American History." And this is a column that candidates throughout American history who made significant impacts on presidential elections, but didn't win them. And the author of this article gives some examples The biggest one would be Theodore Roosevelt, who served 2 terms as president. His vice president, William Howard Taft, becomes president. So once Taft becomes president, he starts trying to undo some of Roosevelt's policies. Roosevelt was not happy about that. So when Taft goes to run, he jumps in and he actually campaigns against Taft. And he split the Republican vote. And the Democrat, Woodrow Wilson, was able to win the election because of that. And the author of this gives some other examples as well, like Strom Thurmond and George Wallace. Strom Thurmond, I think he ran in 1968. George Wallace, I think, ran in 1972. And they both won multiple states and won some around the South, but they did not win their respective elections. But look at this closing paragraph. Well, not look at this, but listen to this closing paragraph in this opinion piece. And the closing paragraph says, right, should we want an independent president? Would it benefit American democracy? If you see partisanship and traditional political parties as major obstacles to representative government, the answer is yes. But if you see them as an essential democracy, necessary tools for taming conflict, balancing discordant values, ordering democratic deliberation, and organizing democratic action, you might recoil when someone like an unaccountable billionaire suggests we'd be better off without them. This goes against party politics, and I want my party to be in power. Pretty much what this author is saying. Twitter has been ripe with a lot of takes about Shultz's presidential bid. Of course, Twitter has become a cesspool of. However, I think the worst of these takes, from what I've seen so far, probably belongs to Brandon Friedman. Brandon Friedman, his Twitter bio says he's a columnist at the New York Daily News, and it also says that he's a former Obama guy. I'm not sure what he did for Barack Obama, if he was a part of Obama's campaign or if he did something within his administration. I'm not sure. But he tweets this out on January 30th. And this was this past week. And this is my first nominee for the worst take of 2019. Something I want to do at the end of this year, I want to actually award the worst take of 2019. And I would like my listeners to help me out with this. Yes, I would like all of you to help me decide what would be the worst take, the dumbest thing said in 2019. Anyway, here's what he tweeted. If you grew up in the projects, then you're paid. The projects are taxpayer-funded public housing. Your friends, neighbors, family members, and millions of Americans you never met all worked and paid their taxes so that you wouldn't have to grow up homeless. That's right. Shultz has no right to take credit for his success because taxpayers paid for his housing. Never mind the fact he made it out of the projects. Never mind the fact that he launched his own company based on an idea. Never mind the fact that he bought Starbucks into a global success. No, all that credit goes to the taxpayers who paid for his housing. You know what this sounds like? This actually sounds kind of familiar, and you probably remember this.
You were successful, somebody along the line gave you some help. There was a great teacher somewhere in your life. Somebody helped to create this unbelievable American system that we have. Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
That's right. Barack Obama's famous speech back during the 2012 campaign about Mitt Romney. Because Mitt Romney was campaigning as a self-made billionaire and a successful businessman, and here comes Barack Obama going, you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen. Someone else did that. You were education and people paid for roads that you used in this American system and blah, blah, blah. So this Friedman guy is taking a page out of Obama's playbook by saying that Howard Shultz is not a self-made billionaire because he system of public housing that prevented him from that prevented him from being homeless. So I want everyone to remember this when it comes time to decide. What Brandon Friedman said is one of the things I have ever heard. It also reinforces this idea that no one person is responsible for their own success. Instead, everything is made possible because of a collective. Forget individualism. No, it doesn't make anything happen. Remember that. Well, Howard Shultz isn't showing any signs of backing down. He still seems adamant about running a presidential campaign and trying for the White House. So get this to go on. And there's something that he said earlier this week that people are really going to key on, these Democrat presidential candidates especially. If you remember, Kamala Harris did a town hall and there was one thing that she said, and it terrified a lot of people. And then I believe she actually walked this back later on. But one thing that she said was, she was talking about Medicare for all, and she said she went away with private insurance completely and wants healthcare to be completely public. Well, Howard Shultz was asked about this during an interview, and he said that this is not. Now, one thing that he said is that he wants the Affordable Care Act to stay, and he wants it to be refined. But he said that it's not American if you abolish private insurance. So get ready for people to. Meanwhile, all of these identity politics attacks of him being a white male billionaire is only going to continue. I, for one, hope he does run for president, not because I want to see Donald Trump and not because I want Howard Shultz to be president. The reason why I don't want him to back down from this now is because once you give in to these internet mobs, that's it. You're done. They own you. They will not back off. Howard Shultz will still be but they're going to have this feeling that they control him from that point. So I hope that Howard Shultz continues to run. And honestly, I think it would be great for a serious third-party candidate, especially one who's an independent. You're not going to see, Green Party is never going to have anybody significant, and Libertarian Party. Yeah, that's not going to happen. But I would really like to see a serious third-party candidate maybe get in system a little bit. I think it would be great. And the only other major thing going on this week, of course, this is Super Bowl week. The Super Bowl is Sunday, February 3rd. For the first time in a long time, about the Super Bowl this year. And I know that this one has a very specific theme because it's the Patriots against the Rams. If you remember, Super Bowl 36, the New England Patriots defeated the St. Louis Rams, and that was the beginning of the Patriots dynasty. And now there's all this talk of if this is going to be the last run for Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, if this is going to somehow come full circle, if the Patriots dynasty that began is going to end with a Super Bowl win over the Rams. Of course, now they're the Los Angeles Rams, but still, same team, Rams. We'll see what happens with that. As far as a prediction, I think that Patriots probably pull this one out. I think it'd be. Well, I'll tell you one thing about Los Angeles. If the Rams somehow win the Super Bowl and they throw a parade in Los Angeles, I'm going to be interested to see actually show up. The NFL had been trying for years to get itself back in Los Angeles because the Rams, who were once there, moved to St. Louis. The Raiders moved from Los Angeles back to Oakland. And then it's just the NFL just had no presence in the city. But now you have two teams there, the Rams and the Chargers. The Chargers have very few fans. Every one of their home games looks like a road game. And it just, like if you watch a Rams game on TV, it doesn't look like there's a lot of people there. And I know the Rams did make it to the Super Bowl, and even if they win this Super Bowl, that does not necessarily mean that the NFL in Los Angeles is. So I'd be interested to see how many people actually show up to a Rams Super Bowl parade in LA. But I think the Patriots probably pull it out. And if they do, then everybody's going to watch Brady and Belichick. Next move is going to be. So my prediction, Patriots win. One thing I am interested about in the Super Bowl, though, is Tony Romo. Tony Romo is going to be the color analyst. And if you remember the AFC Championship between the Patriots and the Kansas City Chiefs, the offense was on the field and they were driving. Romo called every one of their plays correctly. There was one, I think they were like inside the 10-yard line, and Romo said that Brady was going to hand off to Sony Michel. Michel was going to run up the right. Brady hands off. Michel runs up the right side. In overtime, when they were driving down the field, the play that set up the touchdown run, Brady said, watch Gronkowski, because they're going to try to get Gronkowski in a one-on-one quarterback, and they're going to use another receiver as a decoy to lure the Chiefs' safety. The ball is snapped, and then, of course, Gronk is one-on-one with a cornerback. Brady throws it. Gronk goes up and gets it and comes down with it. Called that game was amazing. So I am looking forward to that. And that's about the only thing I'm looking forward to in this year's Super Bowl. The NFL just, I know there's been some rule changes. They kind of define what a catch is now what roughing the passer actually is. But the officiating in the NFL this year has just been abysmal. The NFL is kind of losing its prestige, I think. I might be wrong in saying that, but at least to me personally, it's just not that much interested in the NFL anymore. But for those of you who do watch the Super Bowl, I hope you enjoy it. I'll also be watching it. I don't know if I'll enjoy it or not. Hopefully it's a good game. But I will be back here again next weekend with another episode of the Political Circus. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all again next week.